This is Detective Recapped. Today I'm going to explain a romantic comedy film called Sex Guaranteed. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. It's a sunny day in New Orleans and a group of men is working in a rich man's house to fix the roof. As he gazes at the sky, a simple yet loving roofer named Kevin starts talking to his colleagues, Gary and Cesar, about his passions for trampolining. Kevin wants to start the first ever trampoline world in Louisiana, but since the idea is ridiculous, they just make fun of him for it, saying that instead of pursuing that business, Kevin should focus on getting laid. With Kevin's dismissiveness towards the idea, Gary realizes that he hasn't moved on from a certain incident with a certain girl 9 months ago. Kevin gets distracted as Gary starts talking about that, and he accidentally hits his thumb with the hammer. His older brother, Steve, then says his piece, encouraging Kevin to just forget about his ex, shake sheets with girls again, and get back into the game. To this, Kevin just insists that he's cursed, so his colleagues continue to make fun of his Medusa wiener. Upset, Kevin enters the home, where he soon meets a tattooed guy named Hank. He gives Kevin a bottle of beer, and they get to talking in the kitchen. There, Kevin notices a chair with a peculiar hand design, so he starts talking crap about the owner for buying it, not realizing that said owner is standing right there, talking to him. Fortunately, Hank's a humble millionaire with a big heart, so instead of feeling insulted, he invites Kevin to his party later that night. During the party, Hank talks to his friend, Carl, and mentions Kevin. Hank seems pretty distracted and worried that Kevin might not come since he overheard the roofer's conversation earlier. Kevin skips Hank's party and instead goes to the bar with his friends, where he begins complaining about his cursed wiener and how something bad always happens when he thinks of shaking sheets with someone. He comes to the decision that if he stops playing around, then his ex-girlfriend will take him back. But his buddies just return to the topic of wieners since they don't want Kevin to remember his ex. The following morning, the party's still going on and Hank is still talking about Kevin and how scared he is of getting down and dirty with someone. With how much Hank is thinking about Kevin, he ought to just do the deed himself. But that's not where the story is heading to. Instead, he tells Carl that this is faith and decides that he should get Kevin laid. Carl agrees while doing crack, and that's pretty much the most reliable seal of approval anyone can get. Meanwhile, Kevin and Steve are on their way to meet an investor named Ted, who's also an old friend of their father's. They want to convince him to invest in the trampoline business, but Ted declines as he doesn't believe that it'll prosper. The same day, Kevin and his colleagues are eating lunch when Kevin suddenly gets a call from Hank, who wants him to meet with a beautiful woman named Zade. Hank tells him that Zade wants to have fun with him, and he assures Kevin that she isn't a prossy, but a sexpert. Again, he invites Kevin to go to the party, and though Kevin doesn't want to go, his mates convince him to. But in the middle of all this, Kevin also realizes that Hank's a rich guy, and he may very well be the investor that he needs to get Trampoline World in full swing. With that, Steve gives him a ride and takes him straight to the party. In Hank's house, Kevin meets Zade and Carl while the wild party continues. Being a man on a mission, Kevin starts telling Hank all about his business plans, but Carl thinks that it's a terrible investment. Hank cuts him off since he believes that it's Kevin's passion before telling the people inside the room to move to the tennis court, as he wants to give Zade and Kevin some alone time. While everyone's on their way to the tennis court, Hank tells Carl to go ahead because he'll be getting something in his room. Then, Hank starts recording a video for his wife who left him, and now he's knee-deep in regrets from the mistakes he made in the past. As it turns out, all this excessive partying just feels like an outlet that he's using to bury his sadness deep within. Hank laments that he was never good enough for her, and now he's not even good enough for the world. And since Hank's already set on departing, he's determined to do Kevin a solid before he goes. Back in the room, Zade's pulling all the stops to entice Kevin, but he turns her down, saying that he's still in the process of getting over his ex-girlfriend. After hearing this, Zade becomes unhappy and storms out of the room, having given up on wooing him. But before Kevin could leave the party, Hank stops him so he can talk to him privately with Zade. Finally, Kevin tells Zade and Hank the curse his schlong wields. First time he jerked the beef, Shuttle Columbia broke apart on re-entry. First girl he banged, she nearly died because she ruptured a cyst while they were doing it. And 9 months ago, he lost his fiancé when they were having their joint bachelor and bachelorette party because she caught him getting a little Lewinsky from a stripper. While Hank is convinced that Kevin's willy is indeed cursed, Zade says that he's just a narcissist who believes that the world revolves around his manhood. And for the record, she clarifies that his ding-dong isn't cursed. He just got caught cheating. Despite all that though, she still insists on hooking up with Kevin. But just as she's about to go down with him, an attractive woman opens the door and interrupts them, while Carl's shouting out in pain from taking too much love filter, leaving him painfully hard. They then drive him to the nearest treatment center, and while waiting for Carl, they return to the topic of Kevin's love life. Hank tells Kevin that he should let him fix his love life, and in return, he'll give him the funds to jumpstart his trampoline business. Naturally, Kevin's taken aback by Hank's kindness towards him, and when he asks why he's being so nice to him, Hank explains, "Love is the most important thing in the world. Without love, you have nothing. I'm not letting it disappear." He also convinces Kevin to go to his ex that same day to tell her that he's starting a business and that he's a changed man. The three of them head to the school where Kevin's ex works at, and while waiting in the lobby, Zade speaks up. She says that his ex didn't leave him because he cheated. She left Kevin because she didn't love him enough. Likewise, Kevin got a sloppy toppy from someone else because he didn't love his ex all that much either. Zade wants him to realize that people leave because they don't love each other, and that's why affairs happen. Just then, the trio learn that Kevin's ex is sick at home, so they leave. For their new game plan, they head on over to the grocery store to buy a care package for Kevin's sick ex-girlfriend. While picking some groceries, Kevin and Zade's friendship deepens, and she keeps making fun of Kevin for being a prude. In turn, Kevin tells her that she's bright and pretty, so she doesn't have to keep being aggressive. This has Zade wondering if Kevin ever gets off-put by how much she curses, so she shows him her aggressiveness while shouting out curses that would make a sailor blush. Kevin just chuckles at her little antics. Meanwhile, Hank is in the car waiting for them to finish their groceries. He wears a pensive look on his face while staring at his razor. But when Kevin and Zade are nearing the car, Hank overhears them talking about how Kevin looks like a pool cleaner, and since one needs a drip to make another drip, he takes Hank to the mall so he can buy him some new clothes that'll make him look like $1,000,000. After paying for their items, Kevin, Zade, and Hank are making their way out when the alarm suddenly starts going off because of the razor in Hank's pocket. He tells the two to run, and despite Kevin and Zade's confusion, they still follow him. While running outside, they came across the police, so Hank explains that it's all a misunderstanding and that he's carrying a razor as part of their romantic gesture. With his sincere apologies, the police understand what Hank's trying to say, so they let him go without a warning. Elated by their decision, Hank goes to hug the officer, but his drug falls from his pocket, resulting in his arrest. The two stop at Zade's house so she can change out of her clothes and get Hank. Meanwhile, Kevin grows impatient as he sees an older man in a suit walking inside her house, followed by two other women. He gets out of the car and runs into Zade's father in the process. He invites Kevin inside to meet her family, and there he discovers that Zade's whole front is a lie. Her real name is Millicent, and she's actually a writer from a wealthy home. After leaving the house, they start bickering in the car, and an irritated Millicent tells Kevin that she'll just bail Hank out and send Kevin home. At the police station, they learn that it'll take an hour before Hank can be released, leaving them no choice but to wait. Though they're not on good terms, the two of them eventually patch things up, and they kill some time and bond some more in the process. While Hank's in prison, he starts talking to an inmate about romantic relationships before he gets released. As for Kevin, he's showing Millicent his trampoline world, and she's receptive to his ideas, while Kevin comments that she's a good writer since she takes chances and says things other people won't. They share an intimate moment until Millicent says that they should get Hank now. Meanwhile, Hank outright tells the prisoner that today is his last day. Confused, the prisoner asks Hank who's after him, and he answers that no one is. With that, he gets released, and Kevin and Millicent are there to fetch him. He encourages them to continue searching for Kevin's ex-girlfriend, though the two of them are reluctant about it now. Then they arrive to the ex's apartment, and Hank enthusiastically hands Kevin some gifts for him to give her. Millicent's unhappy with the idea, and she asks Kevin if he still feels the same way for his ex. Since she's starting to fall for him, she tries to dissuade Kevin to no avail, seeing as both men are set on this mission. She leaves them both to go inside the apartment, and Hank encourages Kevin while he knocks on the door. Finally, Angie answers them and finds Kevin. As she's talking to him, she notices Hank in the corner, and he leaves soon after. Just then, Kevin hears a familiar voice inside Angie's apartment, so he forces his way inside, and lo and behold, he finds his brother Steve there. It turns out that the two of them are now in a relationship behind Kevin's back after Angie broke off their engagement. Furious, Kevin ends up punching his brother and stealing his car keys. Now alone, Millicent's left with Hank's phone, and there she discovers all his concerning video messages that basically hint that he's killing himself. Kevin calls Hank's phone, and when Millicent answers, he explains what happened and tries to confess his feelings for her, but she interrupts Kevin, saying that he has to find Hank as he's about to kill himself. Kevin rushes to Hank's apartment and finds a man lying on the floor. He feels relieved as he wakes up a hungover Carl, but the man is hysterical and doesn't know where Hank is. While Kevin's calling out his name, Hank is sitting on the edge of his roof, drinking and ready to take his life. Fortunately, Kevin finds and sits with him, trying to convince the man not to do it. Hank asks him about Angie, but when Kevin says that it didn't go well, this just added to Hank's baggage. He goes on to tell Kevin about his messed up life, failed relationship, and how his supposed final mission ended up in a failure too. Hank laments that he just wanted to go quietly, that he just wanted to have something good to happen before he went out. In turn, Kevin insists that what Hank did wasn't all in vain. After all, something good is happening right now. Just then, Millicent suddenly finds them on the rooftop and she calls out, telling them to get down. Kevin immediately asks her if she wants to jump his bones before telling Hank that he's over Angie now. He even thinks that he's in love with Millicent, who's happy that Kevin clearly reciprocates her feelings. Kevin and Millicent try convincing Hank to just get down while promising him that the two of them will be hooking up. Though Hank's pretty much convinced now, he almost dies as he falls off the roof with a noose around his neck. The same day, Hank is sleeping while Kevin and Millicent finally kiss. He wakes up from the lip smacking and he encourages them to play their hormone game in another room. Obliging, the lovebirds make their way out, kissing, undressing, and slamming the door in the next room. After a happy blur of passionate kisses, moans, and sweet releases, they stare at each other lovingly, while saying that they're both cursed. Unfortunately, they get interrupted when they hear the doorbell ring. They both get up from their bed, but Kevin falls down the stairs. Still, he feels fine since he's certain now that he isn't cursed. Opening the door, they're surprised to see a young boy with his mom looking for his dad. Carl walks down the stairs, refreshed and well-dressed. He looks at the couple as he picks up his son, and when the family leaves, Kevin looks at Millicent, bewildered. It turns out that Carl's been married the entire time, and she simply tells him that this is a classic romance. Then they walk inside a club to spend another night of partying.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.